Okay, here's an Arch install guide. I'll go over it as fast as I can and explain things as much as I can while keeping it fast at the same time. So some prerequisites. You gotta boot Mint first and have a knowledge of partitions and some hard disk names. Okay, internet. When you enter the Arch ISO, you will be greeted with a terminal prompt, and the first thing you'll need to do is connect to the internet. Here's how you do it. IWCTL, enter that, and then you enter the IWCTL environment, device list the interfaces you have on your machine, yada yada. You can read it over here. And okay, then you just do exit. Alright? Now, after you do this, you have internet. And okay, just a quick disclaimer here. I would recommend you note all these commands down and then boot Arch yourself. Do not watch a video while booting Arch and just try to follow step by step. That's not really a good idea because you'll just overlook a lot of important shit. Understand the fucking process, which is what this video is for. Alright, this command is just gonna set some time date shit, and okay, formatting disk. I'd argue this is the most important part of an Arch install, and the part a lot of people might not get correctly. So what you need to do is first run the command lsblk. This is going to list the storage devices and partitions you have. Here you go. Also note that it's called /dev/nvme0 whatever. Okay, you have to do a /dev first or else it's not going to work. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to run the command cfdisk on a partition. Now keep in mind, you can only partition a disk 4 times. And we're going to need 2 of those partitions for Arch. I think if you have Mint or Ubuntu installed already, well, technically you'll only need 1 partition for Arch because you'll have grub on the Mint or whatever, and then you can run a grub config over there with the OS prober. But generally, you'll need 2 partitions for Arch. And here's why, right? You need a boot partition, which is going to be small. We're talking 512 megabytes. And you'll need bytes, yeah. And you'll need a bigger partition for your actual system. So choose a disk, okay, CF disk. This is going to open up a table. I'll show a picture of it over here. Now, the other one, you can make, the main one, you can make whatever the fuck you want. But the boot one has to follow this specific details. It has to be FAT32, and it has to be EFI boot, not Linux file system. Use the arrow keys to change that. Click on the type and go up. Click the up arrow key. The EFI boot, I think, is the top entry over there. Okay, now after you've done this, after you've made your 2 partitions, click on write and boom, there you go. I'd argue the hardest part is already done. Now, make a directory called MNT. This is where you're going to mount the main partition and the boot partition. So MNT, and then you mount the big one. NVMe, whatever the fuck, P2 is the big one for me. This is the main system. Okay, you can see here, NVMe part 208 gigs. Okay, that's the main one. So you mount this to the MNT. Okay, and then you make another one called boot, and then EFI, and then you mount the boot one to the EFI one. This is where you do the small one, the boot one. Mount it here. Okay, now just a quick little hint here. If you cannot edit these partitions, run this command. This is going to remount it as read and write. You might get an error that says, oh, it's mounted as read only. Just run this command, no problem. Okay, once the partitions are formatted and mounted, it's actually time to install Arch. But before we do it, I just recommend running this command. This is going to make sure you don't get errors like, oh, failed to install package because it's marginal trust. Okay, you don't really need to do these commands, but you can do that if you want. Don't do these ones. Just do the Arch Linux keyring one. Okay, now we're actually going to install Arch. And this is why Arch install is not complicated. Packstrap actually does everything for you. You don't have to compile anything like in Gentoo. Okay, so you just run this command, packstrap. This is the destination, that's the syntax. Base devel contains tools like make and sudo and shit like that. You need them, okay? You know what this Linux stuff is, the kernel, the headers, and the firmware. You need the firmware package on newer machines, and Vim. We're going to be doing some text editing here, and you know what Vim is, okay? I'm not going to get into that bullshit here. Okay, now another thing you'll need to do, you'll need to make an FS-tab. Now, FS-tab basically tells Grub what partitions to look for when it boots. That's like an oversimplification, okay? What you need to do is run the command genfstab-u. This is going to output some kind of details on your partition, and then you do genfstab-u, and you use the -u option, so it uses the UUID of the partition as compared to the names of the partition. So it's not going to use /nvme or whatever as the name. It's going to use the UUID, which is universally unique, and it'll never change. A lot better in case you swap drives around. And then you put it into this folder, etc fstab. Now you've pretty much installed Arch after this command, and you've pretty much told Grub where to look. And what we're going to do is we're going to change root into the new Arch system, and then we're just going to make some pre-install configurations here. I'm going to go over what that is right here. Arch root into the new system using this command. Okay, now you're in. You can do ls and you'll see a familiar directory structure. Okay, all the good old Linux shit. Now, install Network Manager, grub in neofetch. These are crucial tools, Network Managers for Internet, and enable Network Manager. The N and M are capital. What this command basically means is Network Manager is going to be auto-started when you boot up. Okay, now grub install. Now this command, if this fails, it means you did your partition formatting wrong. You're installing grub on the mini boot partition, okay? The smaller partition, the 512 megabyte, 128, whatever fucking size you keep it. I think it's 7 MB, whatever. If this command fails, you partitioned things wrong, you formatted things incorrectly, okay? Go back and do it properly. Make a grub config, and all of this should go well. It should say found Linux image and all that shit. If you didn't, it means you did not install Linux, you did not packstrap your kernel. If grub install didn't work, again, you formatted shit incorrectly. It has to be FAT32 EFI boot system, not Linux file system ext4, okay? And now just quickly do this. cd into root, change directory into root, touch.vimrc, touch basically creates a file, vim.vimrt, edit that file and add these lines. Syntax on, you see syntax, you see number, kj becomes escape, setmount. Okay, this one is kind of useless, but whatever. This will make text editing way easier and reduce the chance of syntax errors, which will cause depression and cause you to give up. Now vim into etc default grub and uncomment this line, okay? Pattern search for it using slash. This video is also an excellent Vim tutorial. This will allow grub to look for other operating systems. And you'll need to download this thing called os-prober. I'll spell it right here. Okay, download it with Pacman and then run this script. This will do this after you've installed Arch fully. This will allow your grub to find other operating systems on your machine, dual boot and that kind of shit. Passwd, set a password. Okay, go into vim local.gen, etclocal.gen, uncomment these two lines, pattern search for them. This is basically your language. These are what the lines look like, pattern search and uncomment them. Comments are hashtags in this file type. Uncomment that shit, right click that shit, and now run the command local-gen. Now vim into this and add this. Okay, here's the file, hclocal.conf. Add this for your language, right click that shit. Make your host name, this is how you do it. Okay, now make a system link for wherever you are. You can use tab to autocomplete. I should have probably mentioned this earlier. And then link it to local time. So every time local time is used, it's going to look at the location. This tells you this is your time configuration. Now run sudo ln-s user. This is going to make a link between VI and Vim. So every time a program tries to use VI, it's going to use Vim. An example of such program is crontab. Okay, now reboot and log in. And you know how to log in, you'll get a TTY port, and now run the command neofetch. Boom. Right? Here's just a word of advice. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. I'll go over some more Arch stuff later, but I think this is the main part I wanted to talk about, the partitioning. Alright? This is how you install Arch. Don't become an obnoxious cunt. And I'll talk about DWM and status bar and all that later, because I believe I know how to explain those things well. But for now, boom, you have Arch. You got the neofetch. I'll talk about setting this shit up later. Thanks for watching.